This video that you're seeing here is, in my opinion, one of the best videos ever shot from the International Space Station, and I think is completely undebunkable. And I'm going to explain why. Hello everybody, hope you're doing well and thanks for joining us for another video. Now, construction of the ISS began in 1998, and this year marks 25 years that there has been a constant human presence on board it. During that time, there have been thousands of photos and videos taken from on there, showing amazing views of Earth, giving a unique perspective on events like wildfires, solar eclipses, volcanic eruptions, and much more, as well as many hours of streams of astronauts doing spacewalks, interviews and discussions on board, talking with private radio operators, and even doing private video calls with channels like Smarter Every Day. Despite that, though, there are many people who believe it's all fake. Some saying there is no ISS at all, others at least prepared to accept that hundreds of people, including myself, have actually photographed the thing, so they accept there is something up there that looks like the ISS and that passes by exactly where and when the ISS trackers say it should, even though there have been numerous examples of people capturing transits of the ISS across the sun or the moon and using parallax to conclude that the ISS is about 400 kilometers in altitude. So we have something that looks like the ISS, passes by where and when the ISS is supposed to, so is traveling the speed of the ISS and is at the height of the ISS, but they're convinced that there's no one actually on board. I think some people just have this inherent distrust that they just think the government tells us all this stuff about the ISS, and in their mind, everything the government says is a lie, so therefore they conclude that the ISS must also be a lie as well. Now, it's one thing to think one source of information is wrong about something, but the ISS has been verified by many different independent sources. And all these different independent sources are all saying exactly the same thing. There's no variation within their stories about the existence of the ISS. There's no bias towards a different narrative. And obviously, bias is just part and parcel of media these days, which is why I like using today's sponsor, Ground News. It's not a news outlet itself, but rather it collects all the news outlets together. For example, the big news story recently in relation to the ISS is this saga between Elon Musk and Donald Trump, with officials calling for NASA to find alternatives rather than relying solely on SpaceX. Ground News have gathered up articles from 57 different news outlets around the world. 13 of them are ranked as being left-leaning, 8 of them more central, and 3 from the right. They offer quick AI summaries, and you can see all the various article headlines as well. In this case, all sides appear to have headlines focused on calls for NASA to have alternatives to SpaceX. And you can click any one of these and go straight to the original source for the article. They're not trying to directly sway your opinion, they're simply making all of the information openly available so that you can make your own informed decisions. If that sounds like your kind of news, then use my link groundnews.com/DaveM to get 40% off their unlimited access Vantage plan, which is the one that I'm actually using. So obviously, if there are no people on the ISS, then all of the footage of people up there must be fake. The issue with that, though, is how would it be faked? And this has been a hot topic for many years, with lots of different ideas being bandied about. For example, when it comes to spacewalk footage, the common claim is to reference the Neutral Buoyancy Lab, which is an underwater mock-up of the ISS that astronauts use to train for spacewalks, because it allows them to experience as close to weightlessness as possible for several hours. So people claim that they just fake the spacewalk footage here by filming the astronauts underwater, and then they just change the background to show the Earth and space. However, as I've detailed in this previous video, it's quite apparent that the lighting and shadows that we see underwater is completely different to the spacewalk footage. The water changes the colours of objects and it filters out some colours more than others. It causes light to refract as well, so you get patches of bright focus light and areas of shadows that are constantly moving around. And occasionally we see things floating off in the spacewalk footage. Now, people claim that these are air bubbles when in fact they're droplets of liquid. But in the spacewalk footage, they travel off in straight lines and in all directions. Yet we can see that air bubbles underwater all travel in one direction, straight to the surface. So, all in all, the underwater footage is not even a close match to the footage we see during spacewalks. Then there's also things like this video that I've previously done, where I found an uninterrupted video several hours long shot on a GoPro during a spacewalk, which I actually synced up to the official EVA livestream feed that used a combination of external ISS cameras as well as helmet camera views, and often the GoPro footage is facing straight towards the live feed footage. And I also synced up the recorded weather imagery for that time as well, and you're able to see the matching cloud formations on Earth in the spacewalk footage. But what about the footage inside the ISS? Because obviously that's not getting faked being weightless by shooting it in a pool, because none of the astronauts are wearing scuba gear. For this, people have suggested zero-G planes, which do indeed create weightlessness and are even used by astronauts for training. But the issue is that those planes can only produce weightlessness for a period of around 30 seconds before the plane needs to pull up, at which point the occupants will experience about double Earth's gravity, so they get pressed into the floor. So faking ISS footage in this manner would require lots of short clips of weightlessness put together and then masking the cuts by changing the camera angles, which is actually the technique they used to film the Apollo 13 movie, which did use zero-G planes for all of the footage of them in space, but you can see it never holds a single camera view for more than 30 seconds before it cuts to a different camera angle. ISS videos, by comparison, are regularly several minutes long and shot in one continuous clip from a single camera, so not in a zero-G plane, because if it was, there would be noticeable periods where the G-force loads on the people would be changing. Another suggestion is the use of wires, that the astronauts are suspended on a harness in order to allow them to create the impression of floating for long periods of time. However, if you watch, like, acrobats, having a pair of wires at your waist leaves you hanging feet down, and you have to be very physical to rotate yourself around, and even then you wind up flipping back round to where you started. And even if you were able to get the harness points placed perfectly that you could hang balanced in any direction, the moment you extend your arms or you pick up any object, you would immediately move your center of mass, and so you would then become unbalanced. For example, the iconic scene in Mission Impossible where Tom Cruise is hanging just off the floor with a pair of wires around his waist. Tom actually explained in an interview afterwards that he needed to put coins in his shoes to keep him balanced because he kept tilting.
I went down to the floor and I kept hitting my face, bam, hitting my face, and the take didn't work. So I went up to the stunt guys and I said, give me, coins. So I put pound coins in and I hung on the cables to see was I level.
And even with those coins, you can see he still frantically needs to move his arms back and forth to control his center of gravity to stop him tilting. Yet in the ISS footage, we can see astronauts moving freely in all directions, moving their limbs about with no sudden changes to their balance either. To get that sort of effect on Earth would require multiple pairs of wires, such as being attached to their arms and legs as well, in order to allow full external control of the person's balance and to allow them to float around whilst essentially lying down, kind of like a puppet on strings. However, that creates its own problems. You can see astronauts moving between compartments through very small hatchways, and there are many clips with astronauts together floating past each other, which, if they were all on wires, would cause the wires to tangle up with each other. Now, for a while, the go-to challenge video to ask these conspiracy theorists to explain has been the 50-minute long ISS tour video, which involves astronaut Steve Swanson taking us on a detailed look around many different compartments of the ISS, all in a single unbroken video. However, I think I found a video that one-ups even that tour video for being undebunkable. This is a video on the European Space Agency's YouTube channel. It's just over 6 minutes long, and it takes the camera through the Columbus laboratory, through the JAXA's Kibo module, and finishes up in the docked Dragon capsule, ending with a view of Earth out of the window. Now sure, you might be thinking, how does this trump the 50-minute tour? Well, the key difference is that this ESA video is a 360-degree video. This was part of a series of videos called Cosmic Kiss that were shot by ESA astronaut Matthias Maurer. Many of them are videos where the camera is in one spot and you can see the astronauts all working around it. There's one video showing a crew arriving at the ISS, and there's this one which is a float through the space station, ending up at one of the windows looking out at Earth. But during the entire time, you can actually control the direction of where you're viewing and where you're looking, so you can look wherever you want. It's not like people can argue that they're using careful camera control to hide the views of the wires or whatever, because I've seen that claim previously made, that they're using an ISS interior mock-up with gaps in the ceiling for the wires to go through, and then they just CGI the ceiling back in afterwards. Well, this video allows you to view the ceiling as they are moving through hatchways into different compartments with not a single wire in sight. Not only that, but as Matthias moves into the Dragon capsule near the end, he has to pass through a very narrow gap between several white storage boxes, which would be pretty damn impossible to do with wires attached to him. Plus, the thing is in darkness and Matthias has to hold out a handheld light in order to find his way through. That would be some insanely complex CGI at play. Plus, there's lots of tiny little details as well, such as when Matthias is moving between the Columbus and JAXA modules, he passes through Node 2, and there are 3 hatches visible. One on each side to access the Columbus and JAXA modules, and then one above him. And you can actually see his reflection in the hatch windows as he passes through, though not all simultaneously. The appearances are slightly staggered because the hatches are at different angles. Again, would be some wild level of CGI to achieve that. And I also find it really interesting how difficult it is to control the camera view, because as they're changing direction, the direction for the camera is changing too. But it's not intuitive for us because there's no external frames of reference. For example, as you come through the JAXA module, dragging up and down will tilt the camera as you would expect, but dragging left and right rotates the view rather than pivoting it. It's only when Matthias turns 90 degrees at the end of the module that the camera then begins responding how you would expect it. For me, that really drives home that there's no true up or down on the ISS, and that really you need a window with a view of Earth in order to get that reference, because when you're inside each corridor, our frames of reference all look the same. But the camera must be determining what it considers up and down to be. So, all in all, I think whilst it's barely 1/10 of the duration of the 50-minute video tour, I think this is the most undebunkable one because of that 360-degree element that allows you to see everything going on all at once. I really do think 360 videos make a lot of things harder to refute, given that the 360 videos we took in December in Antarctica really drove home the validity of it to a lot of people. And who knows, perhaps this video will do the same for those that think the ISS is fake. Although I wouldn't be surprised if, like the Antarctica videos, some people try pointing to the stitch line from the 360 camera as being some glitch that proves it's CGI. And finally, whilst I think this float-through video is the most undebunkable ISS video, there is actually another one that I found that I particularly enjoyed, which is another 360-degree video, but shot inside the cupola as Matthias is doing some photography of Earth. It's so fun for me seeing a Nikon D5 with a 70 to 200mm f2.8 lens. That's a combined total of 3 kilos, just effortlessly floating away. Although I really like towards the end of the video because Matthias stops shooting photos and can be seen just looking out of the window as the ISS passes into the dark side of Earth and the sunlight fades away, slowly plunging the cupola into darkness. And again, with all the reflections off all of the windows showing up as well, it looks truly amazing and is something that I would absolutely love to experience. But anyway, that's going to wrap it up for this video. Do you think this is the most undebunkable ISS footage? Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments down below. Thanks once again to Ground News for sponsoring this video. Don't forget to check out that link in the description down below. And if you enjoyed this video and you haven't already done so, then please consider hitting the like and subscribe buttons, and hopefully we'll see you in the next video.